honest.
On the 12th of April, I still remember I was coming back from somewhere in Chesterton, pressed play, I was like, what's this video? Mine was blown, paid my £25 the same night.
I'm not normally politically motivated, but this has really made me feel strongly that we must support Nigel in his efforts to make sure that Brexit happens.
It's what people voted for, so it needs to happen. Anything else is just shouldn't be allowed.
It's just like we're being cheated out of something that the majority of people have voted for.
If you want the Brexit you voted for, you have to vote for the Brexit Party. You're not going to get it with any of the other parties.
It's a great change to see people like Nigel, to be able to represent the people, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. Best thing to happen to this country in a long time, I think. Yeah.
From my perspective, the really important that democracy prevails.
He will infuse many more people to come out of the cupboard and say that they are Brexit supporters and get the message out so that we can be really ready for a general election.
No one in this country has invested more time, more effort, more energy or more emotion into getting the independence of our country from the European Union than me.
For me, Nigel represents somebody who is absolutely honest.
On the 12th of April, I still remember I was coming back from somewhere in Chesterton, pressed play, I was like, what's this video? Mine was blown, paid my £25 the same night.
I'm not normally politically motivated, but this has really made me feel strongly that we must support Nigel in his efforts to make sure that Brexit happens.
It's what people voted for, so it needs to happen. Anything else is just shouldn't be allowed.
It's just like we're being cheated out of something that the majority of people have voted for.
If you want the Brexit you voted for, you have to vote for the Brexit Party. You're not going to get it with any of the other parties.
It's a great change to see people like Nigel, to be able to represent the people, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. Best thing to happen to this country in a long time, I think. Yeah.
From my perspective, the really important that democracy prevails.
He will infuse many more people to come out of the cupboard and say that they are Brexit
You're not interested in me. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
For those of you who expected Richard Tice, the James Bond of Brexit, to chair this, I can reassure you, Richard has not suddenly put on 50 pounds and decided to grow a beard. I'm Henrik Overgaard Nielsen. I'm one of the elected 3 MEPs for the North West. If we end up in Boris's new treaty, it means that we cannot allow access to our territorial waters on a discriminatory basis. This means that foreign fishermen will still be able to plunder the fish in our waters. Fish landed in the UK has gone down by more than 50% since we joined the EU, and the number of fishermen has almost halved since the mid-1990s. About a month ago, I went to Fleetwood in Lancashire, with their amazing Brexit Party candidate Leanne Murray. Fleetwood was once England's third biggest fishing port, employing 11,000 people. Now there's not a single full-time fisherman left. You used to be able to walk from one end of the harbour to the other on all the boats. When I was there, I saw 5 boats in all, of which 2 were sunk. They still process fish in Fleetwood for all the fish and chip shops, but all the fish landed in Fleetwood now comes in on a truck from Norway. The sad thing is that we import over 40% of the fish we use from other EU countries, much of it caught in our waters. We used to export fish, but since 1984, we've had to import a lot of the fish we eat. Fish stocks should be managed as a renewable resource. The failed EU system of quotas does not work and is the cause of huge discards, which is the throwing away of caught fish that is dead. Unlike most of the Westminster elite, who wouldn't know a fishing boat from a yacht, I've had many jobs catching cod and eel in the freezing cold Baltic Sea. My family are fishermen in southeastern Denmark, and my brother-in-law's family have lived off the sea for generations. Working in many parts of the fishing industry has shown me clearly the devastating effect EU membership has had on the Danish fishermen, including my family, and I can see the huge reduction in the number of fishing boats in the local harbour. My nephew, a Danish fisherman with a small fish business, wanted to bring his teenage son into the industry, like his father had done with him. But because of the destructive policies of the European Union, he has realized that there would be no future for him. His visit to me in the European Parliament in Strasbourg the other week confirmed this. This is a disgrace caused by politicians, and the Brexit Party in Westminster will make sure changes are made and hopefully act as a catalyst for change across the rest of Europe. The world is in need for more fish, and the UK have got huge resources in their waters. The UK will have a big voice in the world of fishing if we regain control of our waters like Norway has done. We must implement an environmentally and economically fit-for-purpose policy, letting our fishing industry become sustainable and successful, looking after our own resources. Our fishermen deserve better than this new treaty, and for us to keep being shackled and unable to help our coastal communities as they deserve. Apart from wasting my time in Brussels and Strasbourg, I still work as an NHS dentist 2 days a week. And one of the problems we face in dentistry is the need to tender for our own NHS contracts on a regular basis. And this is not only in dentistry. It happens in A&E departments and many other services in hospitals all over the country. Labour keeps talking about our NHS is not for sale, as if this would be the biggest problem in a trade deal with the US. The obsession with putting everything out to tender for awarding any public contract actually stems from EU directives and was set in motion under the previous Labour government. So for the Labour Party needs to wake up and realise that much of the NHS has been for sale for years, and it was started by them. Their selective memory really is amazing. It is a cardinal rule of the EU that foreign companies should be able to bid for contracts in member states, including in public services such as the NHS. This is what happens at the moment. So let me tell you, Jeremy, if you don't want foreign companies to be able to win contracts in the NHS, there is only one way of doing it. You need a clean break Brexit. We all hoped that we would have had that exactly by now. Me especially, as going to Brussels had only made me more determined that we need to leave. Let me tell you a short story. It's more Dracula than Snow White. On becoming an MEP in May, the EU sent me over 100 pages on how I could claim taxpayers' money for all sorts of things. I'm sure these will really cheer you up. Did you know that MEPs can have foreign language classes, private healthcare, and best of all, not just for me, but for my whole family? In addition, I'm given £4,000 every month for an office. This does not include staff salaries. It's only for rent and office equipment. No receipts required. And when I asked how I repay the unspent money back to the EU, I was told that there is no facility to repay the money. Rest assured, I'm keeping a tab on monies unspent, and it will be given to UK-registered charities in the Northwest. So at least some of your wasted EU taxes will come back to the constituency. So when the people of the Northwest are trying to make ends meet, pay the rent, and put food on the table during times of austerity, Brussels has definitely not felt the same pinch. The European Parliament is very proud of its green credentials. But when the next Lib Dem or Green tells you how the EU is vital to protect the environment, tell them about the 130 chauffeur-driven limos that are used to transport MEPs around within the city limits. The reason these limos are not electric is because every 4 weeks they have to drive 270 miles from Brussels to Strasbourg and back to satisfy the French government and their insistence on there being 2 parliament buildings in 2 separate countries. And the limos can't be electric because there aren't enough charging points on the way. You couldn't make it off if you tried. Everybody is talking a lot about how we need to protect the environment, but in the Brexit Party, we actually come up with practical and realistic ways of doing something about it. We are committed to planting hundreds of thousands of trees across the country, repopulate forest regions, and thereby reduce the carbon dioxide levels in our country. This will help the environment, it will make our countryside healthier, and it can be done without spending a fortune. The European Parliament has just voted through the new budget of about 170 billion euros, which included, by the way, a 22-fold increase in spending on EU defence. It took Parliament less than an hour to vote through hundreds of amendments, most of them increasing the budget to end with 170 billion. And when I suggested in my 1-minute speech to Parliament that maybe it would be good for them to go in front and try to save money as families in member states are suffering, and maybe we could start with getting rid of the limos, it definitely didn't win me Popularity Prize of the Week. But let us not forget that we had a referendum in 2016, and that referendum has to be respected. To quote Rabbi Sachs, every one of us counts. Every one of us has a voice. You lose that, you lose everything, because then it becomes a game for the rich and powerful. Thank you very much. Well, it's now my great pleasure to introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is the PPC for the Brexit Party for Tatton. She's also a dog groomer, she's a mum, and she is somebody who has come as a newbie to politics because of the way we have been treated, because of not having the 2016 referendum respected. She has decided to put her head above the parapet, and it's therefore a great pleasure to introduce Sarah Mariano.
I'm not a politician, as a rule. I don't like politicians. As Henrik said, that I'm standing to be the prospective parliamentary candidate for Tatton. I grew up in East Manchester in a Labour area, and my father was an immigrant from Italy, as was my grandfather, who came to this country to work on the railways. My background prior to dog grooming is in management consultancy, where for 25 years I delivered multi-million-pound projects for pharma, finance, government and the NHS. This year I trained as a dog groomer as I wanted a work-life balance and to spend more time with my daughter, and got tired of the 60-hour work weeks. I voted to leave in the 2016 referendum as I didn't want the UK to be ruled by Brussels, as I thought it was unelected and an undemocratic governing body. I trusted that the democratic vote of 17.4 million people would be upheld by the government. After 3 years, I've come to the conclusion that the two-party system is broken and that democracy is broken, and that we're living in an unhealthy system whereby the vote of the people seems to count for nothing. Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, the Conservatives have had 2 chances and have done the same thing, with Boris's deal being 95% the same as May's withdrawal agreement. And you can't fix a problem with the same people that created it. So the only way we can fix this unhealthy system is with new people, not the existing people. The only way we can get Brexit done is with the Brexit Party, who respect the vote of the people and are the only party offering a clean break Brexit to take back control of our laws, our borders and our fisheries, which Boris's deal doesn't. If you want to vote, if you want to have a Brexit, please vote for the Brexit Party. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Now, the next speaker was a referendum agent in 2016. He and his wife worked tirelessly at the European parliamentary election, and therefore, in the Northwest, so therefore I personally owe him a big gratitude. He has also got 11 children, so I'm not quite sure how he's got the time to do all this stuff as well. And you better watch out, because he's actually also a dentist. So, very welcome to David Walker.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I'm both very happy and honoured to have been selected to represent the Workington constituency. I was appointed on Monday in London. I am now giving my maiden speech today, on stage, with Nigel Farage and my other good friends and colleagues, so no pressure there. Whilst thinking about what to put in my speech, I thought I would tell you how passionate I am about delivering a true Brexit. How passionate I am about us building a strong and independent and democratically accountable nation. How passionate I am to see governments actually honouring the people that vote for them and delivering on their wishes. I was also going to wax lyrical about how much better off we will be out of the EU's grip and how much better our post-real Brexit lives would be. Then I thought maybe I should leave that up to Nigel and focus on 2 words instead: forgotten and work. For far too long, regions such as ours have been forgotten and perhaps even abandoned. Historically, this area is safe labour. But what have they actually done here in recent years? What are they going to do for the 61% that voted to leave in this constituency? The answer is they will ignore them. As for the Tories, they will be trying to fool us with fake Brexit, which is not what we wanted either. We are seeing Boris's promises melt away like butter on a hot day. Only yesterday, according to the National Audit Office, we again see evidence of broken promises from the Conservatives, as the government plan of 2014 to build 200,000 discounted starter homes for the under 40s has resulted in absolutely zero being built. Shameful. Then there is my second word, work. If I succeed in being elected to this seat, I will work tirelessly to be your strong voice in Westminster. With the right attitude, we can turn challenges into opportunities. Let me put the work back into Workington for you, and I will do my level best to ensure you don't regret it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David. Now, obviously, we are just the warm-up act. Our next speaker, I'm sure you need no more introduction. Really, no one else has done as much for Brexit as he has. He has worked tirelessly for the past 25 years. He is actually the reason that we're all here today. He's the leader of the Brexit Party, but I think we will start off with just, let's watch a video to see what he was up to yesterday.
Day one, event one, here we are in Bolsover. Yep, I've been in the ring. It's not the first time I've been in the boxing ring. I've taken on Jean-Claude Juncker, Mr. Van Rompuy, and many, many others over the years. And of course, this time, we're taking on the entire establishment, and particularly here, the Labour Party, because they made a load of promises to people that the referendum result would be respected. They've now turned their backs on communities like this, and we're going to make sure in areas like this, people have a real choice. And the only party that actually believes in Brexit is the Brexit Party. But anyway, I mustn't go on. I've got to get to Ashfield now. We're fighting an election campaign at the moment where Labour and Conservative are saying, we'll spend this, we'll spend that. What we've got to start thinking about is how to create the money to spend. We're in Ashfield. I'm here with Martin Dalby, our PPC for the constituency. Proper fish and chips, gotta tell you. But if only the fish had been caught in British waters, I'll bet you every pound to a penny that fish was imported from Iceland or Norway, which kind of sums up why we need Brexit. Quick charter in Wetherspoons and off to the rally.
Welcome to the stage, Nigel Farage.
Thank you. Good morning, Workington. Good morning. Day two on the campaign trail. You saw our exploits yesterday. Now, in the past, you may remember, Worcester Woman was apparently going to decide the outcome of the election. And then another one was Mondeo Man. But this time we're told it's Workington Man. Can I just say, this has all been dreamt up by a Conservative think tank in London, and I think it's a load of patronising cobblers to people who live in Workington and this part of the country. I really, honestly and truly do. But you're going to get bombarded, I think, with press and political figures. And I thought, well, I'll come as quickly as I possibly can to lay my cards on the table, to talk about this election, and to talk about something else that I think really matters. You know, this weekend, it'll be Remembrance Sunday, and we're going to remember massive sacrifices that those generations before us made so that we could be a free, independent country and live under democracy. And it's that very principle of democracy that I put to you has been traduced by our Parliament, by many of our leading political figures over the course of the last 3.5 years. In this town, as in so many others, you woke up on the 24th of June 2016 and by over 60% you said, whoosh, we've done it, we've beaten the establishment, we've won. We're going to get back our independence, our rights of self-government. And the fact that 3.5 years on, that has not been delivered is, I think, a complete and utter disgrace. And despite all my long years of campaigning, I actually myself mistakenly thought in 2016 that my work was done. Even I thought they couldn't surely break that promise to deliver on the referendum. Well, I was fooled then, but I wasn't prepared to be fooled anymore. And that's why earlier this year, I set up the Brexit Party to say, look, we voted to leave the institutions of the European Union, not to be half in or half out, to be a free, independent country that makes its own laws, decides its own future, controls its own borders, and gets its own fishing waters back, and many other things beside. That's why I founded the Brexit Party earlier this year, and I'm here before you today to say that just as I was conned in the wake of that referendum, I don't want you to be conned by people in this general election. And I'm going to take this message out the length and breadth of this nation. I've got 60 events booked in my diary already. I mean, I'm working hard. I've barely got time for a beer. You know, I mean, it's pretty serious. But it is important that people understand the extent of the betrayal, and particularly, let's start, shall we, with the Labour Party. Senior figures, well, they're your MPs, you know. Senior figures in that party said during the referendum campaign, in the wake of the referendum campaign, and indeed in their general election manifesto in 2017, that they would respect the result of the referendum and implement it. Remember that? Loud and clear. Not difficult. And where are we now? Well, you almost couldn't make up Labour's policy. We saw Diane Abbott on Question Time a few weeks ago, laying it out in her own true, brilliant style. And she explained, as indeed Keir Starmer did yesterday on Breakfast Television with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid. Here's the policy. Labour win the election. They then go to Brussels. They negotiate a new deal. They then put that deal to the British public in a referendum against Remain. And they then campaign against the deal that they've negotiated. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up, could you? The truth of it is that Labour have broken all of their promises. They are now outright a party of Remain. What they intend to do is to give you a referendum where the choices are Remain against Remain. And that is a complete and utter betrayal of 5 million Labour Leave voters in constituencies like this and in many other parts of our country. And I just want to say this. If you're a Leave voter, you cannot vote Labour in this election because it's clear they will betray your vote. So that's a very, very clear message I want to take out round the country. And the second message is a little more complicated because we're all pretty tired of Brexit going on and on, aren't we? Week after week of shenanigans in Parliament, on televisions and radios and newspapers full of it. But to say, let's get Brexit done, it's kind of tempting, isn't it? I've got this car for sale. It's got a really shiny bonnet, is what Boris is saying. Let's get Brexit done. No, for God's sake, don't open up and look at the engine. Don't worry, it's fine, honestly. There's nothing to worry about whatsoever. Now, look, he inherited a very difficult position. You know, Mrs. May had signed us up to this abject surrender treaty. I mean, the kind of thing, frankly, you would only sign up to if you've been defeated militarily in war. It was awful. Boris picked that up, and the clock was ticking, running down to the 31st of October. And what he tried to do was to renegotiate it. What he tried to do was to improve it. And there was one improvement. The improvement was that Great Britain was not committing itself fully to being part of the customs union in perpetuity. But the price of that was putting a border in the Irish Sea, separating off Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, something I think that will have huge consequences in Scotland over the course of the coming years. Boris's Great New Deal is 95% the same as Mrs May's bad old treaty. And the reason that Parliament met for the first time in 37 years on that Saturday is he tried to bounce it through Parliament within 24 hours before the ink was dry on the document, before anybody had understood what was actually in it. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but we're now going to have to lift up the bonnet, because the general election has given us a chance to actually step back a little bit and take some time and try and understand what's happening. And I'm sorry to say, I like Boris personally, but I'm sorry to say that what he is presenting just is not Brexit. It's as simple as that. He says it'll all be over by Christmas. Now, previous British leaders and military commanders who've said that have come unstuck. Far from this being over by Christmas, if we sign up to this, what we do is to enter into the next phase. And the next phase are a series of negotiations which Mr. Barnier, the brilliant Mr. Barnier, you might see Barnier as a hate figure, but actually he's done a brilliant job for the European Union side in these negotiations. Damn sight better job than our civil service had done, I've got to tell you. And Barnier, last night, I think torpedoed Boris's election policy below the waterline when he said, we will not have negotiated a new deal by the end of 2020, something Boris and Gove have been saying. In fact, and Henrik and I know because we work over there, he said the next phase will take at least 3 years. So far from getting Brexit done, we enter into 3 more years of negotiations, during which time we continue to pay the bill, which by the time we finished will be 65 billion since we voted to leave. And get this, we'll be subject to all the rules, laws and regulations that are made during that period, despite the fact we will have no say or influence or vote on them whatsoever. It is almost like volunteering to become a colony in the hope that ultimately our captors, hello, have a lovely morning, in the hope that our captors will somehow be nice to us. And even if we did sign up to a new trade deal at the end of 3 years, there are preconditions. They're written in the document. One is that we do not get back our fishing rights. And just look at what's happened here in the Northwest. A fishing industry that has virtually disappeared since the Common Fisheries Policy came into being. And we will have to have regulatory alignment on everything from social policy to employment policy to environmental policy, even to taxation. So effectively, we're saying that from everything from financial services to fisheries, we will abide by the EU rulebook forever, even though in theory we've left. Oh, and by the way, any disputes in the future will be adjudged by the European Court of Justice. And I haven't even got on to open borders. You know, one of the reasons Brexit succeeded was people said, you know, we are the most tolerant country in Europe, but we must have control on the numbers of people coming into our country. Free movement will continue until at least, under these proposals, 2022. And thereafter, they've written a new clause in, calling it mobility. And I think the reality is, if we want to sign up to a deal with them, they will insist that open borders and free movement with Europe continue for all time. Boris, this is not Brexit. And over the course of the next 5 weeks, I will go around this country and explain this to people. And I can back it up, with actually quoting the sentences and the clauses that are in this document. As you know, I've urged Johnson and others to try to build a Leave alliance. I think if we got Conservatives, Brexit Party and some Labour figures together and formed a Leave alliance, we'd walk the election. But unfortunately, British politics is very tribal. It's very much about the red rosette or the blue rosette. And at the moment, they appear to be resisting my offer. Well, that's up to them. If they want to do it, I'll do it. I will always put country before party. I will always put us getting our independence above everything. But what I will not do, after 25 years of campaigning, is stand aside and watch Brexit be sold down the river without standing up on a point of principle and saying that this is not what we voted for. And one of the things I've been quite good at over the years is confounding my critics. I've been written off the number of times I've heard the Farage fox has been shot. Well, let me tell you, the fox is still here and he's alive and kicking, and I will not rest until we get genuine Brexit for our country.
Okay, we got time for a few questions, and you have spoken to Grace, some of you, and Therese from America. I think it might be for you, Nigel. After Brexit, how will we repair our democracy?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And where are you? Hello there. Now, I've got a friend in America, lives in Washington. And, he might not be everyone's cup of tea, but gosh, he's plain spoken, isn't he? He doesn't, I'll tell you what's amazing about Trump, like him or not. He stood up in 2016 and told the American people, I will do these things. And you know what? He's doing them. What a contrast that is to election after election in our country, when both Labour and Conservative put forward manifestos to get you to vote for them without ever even intending to implement them. So there's a very, very important point about democracy. I think he's done a lot to restore people's faith and belief in democracy. And they'll judge him. Next year in November 2020, they'll re-elect him, they'll get rid of him, but at least they'll know that there's somebody who stands up for what they believe. I said at the very start this morning that it is at this time of the year when we think about sacrifices that were made so that we could be a free, independent, democratic nation. I don't think there has ever been a time when our entire democratic system was under such threat as it is today. And the threat is that people just start to give up. The people start to say, what is the point of ever voting for anything or anybody if we're not going to have promises kept? And the sheer scale of broken promises. Even the Liberal Democrats in 2016, the late Paddy Ashdown. Paddy Ashdown, I will stand up and fight any man who does not allow the referendum result to be implemented. So it's across the whole board. We've been lied to on a wholesale scale. We've been betrayed. And that's a strong word, but we have actually been betrayed by many in politics. And now we're being conned into accepting, as I say, a second-hand car, but we've now got time, luckily, to have a look at the engine. And so that's the worry. The worry is our faith in all our institutions is frankly broken, and it's why the Brexit Party actually is about much more than just Brexit. We want to, give us that slide. We want to change politics for good, all right? And that means once we get Brexit done, we've got big reforms in this country that need to happen. The voting system needs to change to introduce an element of proportionality. We need to have citizens with the right to call initiatives and to hold referendums on key issues if they choose, and in law for those results to be binding. We need to get rid of a House of Lords that is now stuffed up with 600 of Blair and Cameron's mates. Let's become a 21st century democracy. Yeah, we'll keep the old buildings, we'll keep the history, we'll keep the heritage. Oh, and by the way, the one good piece of news this week, isn't it great? Burko's gone. So let's keep the beautiful buildings, let's keep the ceremony, but let's reform and update our system to reflect the fact that career politics in those two parties has destroyed it. And I'm determined that we've got to get Brexit done properly and then bring back a vibrant, active democracy in this country. Yeah, sure, we'll fight and disagree with each other, but that's fine, because we'll be governing our own country, and once again, we will be the masters. I think right now that Westminster think they're the masters and you're the servants. We need to make that the other way round.
Next question is from Graham from Workington. How convincing working class people to vote for the Brexit Party? If I'll start off just before I pass on to Nigel, Claire Fox, who some of you might know, and I have just published a book with 10 pieces from different people. It's called The Left-Wing Argument for Brexit, National Sovereignty. It has been produced with EU money, and therefore it is freely available. If anybody would like a copy, just come and talk to me afterwards or contact the office we've got in Stockport, and you will be very welcome to have a copy of it. It is actually very good. But so both Claire and I are obviously left-wingers, but apart from Claire and I myself, the Brexit Party is a very broad church. We have everybody of every kind in the Brexit Party. But Nigel, do you want to comment on how we convince working class people?
I will. Yeah, Graham, I mean, you're right, of course. Part of the problem with this tribalism of politics in this country is that for 100 years the working classes have voted Labour and the middle classes have voted Conservative. And that's how it's been, you know, since our grandparents, basically. I think what Brexit has done, what all the issues around it, like controlling borders, and dare I say it, even whether we're patriotic and we believe in our country, has blown apart those old divides between left and right, blown apart, in political terms, those divides between middle class, working class, upper class, or whatever else it may be. Basically, Graham, now you are either a Remainer or a Leaver, and that is the distinction. That is the difference in British politics. And I, you know, unlike Henrik, I come from a more conservative background. But I always admired Tony Benn. I always admired Tony Benn when he said we should not join the common market because we'll lose our democracy, we'll lose our sovereignty. And so I think this is actually, you know, what I believe, that those of us that want to leave want us to be an independent, self-governing nation. We are the patriotic forces in British politics. We're not against anybody. We want to be friendly with our European neighbours. We just don't want to be told what to do by Mr. Juncker before lunch or even after lunch in his case. We want to be a free, independent nation. Left and right's irrelevant. To me, it's about right and wrong. We voted to leave. We deserve to have it delivered.
Yeah, do you want to say something? Okay, you can decide. No. Okay. Keith from Whitehaven. Are you around? There you are, sir. Question is, do you have any specific policies for this area? David, do you want to say something on that?
Yes. Well, the major employer in this, sorry, where were you? I've lost you. Hi. The major employer in this area, of course, is Sellafield, and I personally fully back all the jobs and investments that they cause to the area. We've recently had the coal mine issue, which Tim Farron famously was against, and some say Sue Hayman doesn't exactly embrace. I personally am for that. Now, some people may say that sort of throws up green issues. It's actually to produce coking coal, which is necessary for the steel industry. So if we don't have coking coal, we don't have steel. And if we didn't dig it up locally and produce jobs and investment locally, we'd have to import it. And that would be a far bigger effect on, global warming or all the rest of it, carbon footprints and what have you. Coming down to the sort of smaller level, although I have only recently stood here, I've obviously already started my researches, and I believe there was a project for a development for a new Workington sports stadium. And I feel people feel quite strongly about it. Well, I personally would like to back all inward investment to the area, all job creation, if at all possible in any way. Clearly things have to be costed, but in principle I'm certainly in favour of that. And on a smaller scale still, we've got the hospital in Whitehaven, but all around Cumbria being such a large area, I think it's completely out of order to expect people not to have some sort of care locally. So, cottage hospitals even, cutting down beds, I'm 100% against that. So that's for starters. When I walk the streets of Workington and surrounding areas and visit you all, eventually, but they've only given me 5 weeks, 65,000 people, quite difficult. But ultimately, elected or not, I'll be walking the streets and you all get to know me in the end, and I'll know every single policy and everything that's going wrong in the area and do my level best, because I'm a workaholic. Nigel's possibly even more so, but on a personal level, I'm an absolute workaholic, and if people put their faith in me, they will see results. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, one point here is there are parts of this country that have fallen hopelessly behind, parts of this country where mobile phone connectivity is a serious issue. Huge areas in this country where broadband internet is but a dream, and all of that at a time when more and more of us are working for ourselves. There's now 5.5 million people in this country who are self-employed, acting as sole traders, and I feel that unless we have a modern infrastructure, particularly digital, how are they to compete against bigger sized companies? So I do think investing in regions like this, that frankly have in many ways been left behind, makes sense. But I also think that thus far in the election, it's all about Labour are going to spend X, the Tories are going to spend Y. Everyone's talking about how they're going to spend money. No one's talking about wealth creation. And you speak to anybody from a shopkeeper to a small employer, and they will tell you the biggest nightmare of their lives is excessive regulatory zeal. The amount of their working life they spend complying with the rules. I'm not advocating a complete free-for-all, but I am advocating that we should be in charge of these rules. And they all, nearly all of them, don't come from our Parliament, they come from the European Union. And being free of this and simplifying rules, lifting the burden off the shoulders of small and medium-sized businesses will create wealth and create jobs in our country. And I suspect I'll be the only person in this general election even talking about that, because the little people have been completely forgotten by Westminster.
Thank you very much. And I can just vouch for David that he did a hell of a lot of work on the European election. So, if he continues with that, which he is going to, then you've got a candidate here that is really going to walk the streets. Okay, I've got 2 questions that are almost the same. One is from John from Coggermouth. There we go, sir. And the other one is Gerald from Workington. There we are, sir. Is a vote for the Brexit Party just a vote for Corbyn? And Gerald says, I'm very frightened of splitting the vote. It would let Corbyn in.
Right, well, 2 points about that. The first is you can't split the Brexit vote if only one party is standing for Brexit. I mean, here's the menu. The menu is vote Lib Dem, they'll scrap the result. Vote Labour, you'll have another referendum with a choice of Remain or Remain. Vote Conservative, You'll get Brexit in name only, but endless years of negotiations and never, ever be free of EU rules and institutions. Or you can vote for us, and our message is we've extended this again and again and again, and the 31st of January is it. We need to leave on the 31st of January with a clean break Brexit. So there's a big choice there for you to select from. There's not been a single election that I've stood in since the early 1990s when someone has not said, you'll split the Conservative vote and let the others in. All I can say is thank God I ignored that argument over the years. Otherwise, there'd never have been a referendum. We'd never have won the referendum. There'd never have been a Brexit party or any chance of us actually getting our will implemented. Here's the truth of it, that a lot of Westminster, a lot of the commentariat don't see or understand. Back in 2015, I led UKIP into a general election. We managed to get 4 million votes. And far from, as all the experts told us, letting Miliband into number 10, we took more Labour votes than we took Conservative votes. In fact, arguably, David Cameron wouldn't have got a majority without our vote. And here we are at this election, and I'm going to put this to you. The single group of people most likely to vote Brexit Party are those of the 5 million who voted to leave in constituencies like this and have normally been Labour voters. They've been absolutely betrayed. Many of them will not go to the Conservative Party because just generationally their families have seen them as the enemy. And the Brexit Party is here, a joining of people from across the political spectrum who believe in our nation, believe in our country. And I hope that what we can do, and one of the reasons I shall ceaselessly be going around this country, is to say, look at Cumbria, 6 constituencies. We as a party in May, having been founded less than 6 weeks, topped the poll in 5 of those constituencies. And if we can create anything like that energy and optimism in this election, we can get MPs into Westminster standing up and fighting our corner who will not sell out to fake Brexits, who will not sell out to second referendums. And that's why we need the Brexit Party in Westminster.
Okay, next one. It's sort of a bit the same again. So I've got Lee from Whitehaven. Hello, sir. And Peter from Scotland. Down there. Lee says the emails regarding supporters choosing policies for the manifesto, is this still happening? And Peter wants to know, where can I find a manifesto? So, okay, point number one, I mean, the Brexit Party is unlike any other political party. We've set it up. I set it up as a limited company run by a board because we literally had a few weeks before we fought an election, and having streamlined decision making means that I can actually get things done. But what we want to do, we've got about 150,000 registered supporters who paid their 25 quids around the country. And yes, we have been consulting them, polling them, asking them for their input and ideas on things, and that will continue. But Manifesto. If I did a word association test with the word manifesto, this chap in the front row's got it already. Just lie is the only word that possibly comes to mind. We will issue a contract with the British people. We will not call it a manifesto. Let the others call theirs manifestos. Nobody will believe a word that they say. Ours will be a contract with the British people. And you already know, I've laid out already significant political reform. I've touched a little bit on investment in the regions and particularly in connectivity in the 21st century, without which we simply can't compete. And we will go on through health, talking about how we can actually get better value for the money that we spend, through to, well, I've touched on fisheries already. I tell you what, we're going to take back our territorial waters and not allow the common fisheries policy to go on destroying a great historic British industry, and on from there. Don't worry, there'll be no shortage of alternatives for how this country, we believe,
could and should be governed, but we've got to have a clean break from the European Union to be able to do any of it.
Okay, I want to say thank you to David. I want to say thank you to Sarah. And then the last question is from Tony from Workington.
This is obviously the trick one you've kept to the end.
Yeah. I would rather Nigel as Prime Minister. If the Brexit Party win, who would that be?
Yeah. Well, Tony, it's a good question. Let's be realistic. Under our current political system, there are only two people who can be Prime Minister. Realistically, it is going to be Boris or Jeremy Corbyn. You know, I thought watching yesterday Joe Swinson stand up and say, I could be the next Prime Minister. I mean, it's funny, I suppose, but it just had no credibility. And the same goes for the Brexit Party. You know, we can't win this election, but what we can do, and what I'm going to do over the course of the next 5.5 weeks, going around the country as I am, and very pleased to be here with you this morning, what I'm going to do is fight the case to get enough MPs into Westminster to make the difference. Over the course of the last 2 years, the 10 members of the DUP have basically held the balance of power in Westminster. Whilst Corbyn can't possibly, under any circumstances, get a majority, we're likely to have the Conservatives as the biggest party, and we're likely to have a relatively hung parliament. That's how it looks to me right now. So getting enough Brexit Party MPs in there not only will put the fear of God into them, but we might, with any luck, be able to get Brexit going in the right direction. And that means not signing up to a new EU treaty whose terms in many ways are worse than even staying a member of the Union. And that is what we're going to fight. But you know something? There's one good thing about Boris in this situation. He changes his mind all the time. You know, twice he voted against Mrs. May's deal, didn't he? Saying it would be a suicide vest around the necks of British democracy, it would lead to vassalage, and on the third occasion he voted for it. He's very good at moving around with the wind, and if we in the Brexit Party can get that wind strong that says we voted to leave the European Union and nothing less than that is good enough, he'll change and we'll get there. Thank you.
Well, I might still start the production of Nigel for Prime Minister T-shirts, and I'm going to make a fortune out of it. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. Thank you for being here, and thank you to... Yeah? Yeah. The thing, sorry.
Look, parties chop and change candidates. We chopped and changed candidates. The last guy, who I've known for years, who's a very nice bloke, just hadn't done enough. The view of the party was this candidate would be harder working. I'm sorry, these decisions have to get taken. You know, we are days away from nominations closing. And, you know, sometimes, rather like in a business, a decision has to get made. You hope you've gone through the right thought process. You hope it's been done fairly, but it's been done. The cards have been dealt. We're fighting a general election.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.